I know you guys recorded an episode. Are you guys going to release that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's been we did like a recap of last year and like goals for the new year. It's just too late to like.
It's not too late. It's still the beginning of the year.
No, I know, but not really. It's March.
To me, that's still the beginning of the year because I'm just getting my year started.
I think we'll probably get together and record something in the near future. It's just that editing takes a lot, so I haven't been, and I've kind of taken ownership over it because I like to control what's being put out there.
Yeah.
Just because like the things we talk about are so, all of our friends and like the relationships like have been so intertwined that I need to be careful of the things that I'm saying and like filter what I'm saying to people. So I need to have like a list of what I'm going to say before I say it.
Exactly. You can always edit like the little things.
But that's the thing. Like I get too
much into it.
Yes,
it becomes like the whole
and then it's like I had an hour and a half. That's down to like now 30 minutes because I cut out so much content. So
that's okay. But I actually wanted to talk about the Open for a second.
Okay.
And how did you like it?
Like the workout. Brutal. Absolutely brutal. And it was. I didn't think it would be as challenging as it was. I get really excited for the Open because I think it reinstills the love of CrossFit for me. Mm-hmm. Like I usually have a period of time right before the Open that I'm like, do I want to do CrossFit? Why am I doing this? Reevaluate that. But the spirit of the Open, especially at our gym, really helps me with that. But this year, because of my injury and the things that I've been dealing with physically, it's been very challenging at the gym. So I've been scaling back a lot. And now the Open's here and I'm like, well, I want to do it RX because, you get into your head about scaling and
doing CrossFit has always got that competitiveness in everybody, kind of like brings it out of you.
Yeah.
But I would agree that our gym has like good energy.
Yeah, for sure.
You feel like you want to do it and you want to RX, you want to do it well.
Yeah, and I think that's we can attribute that to the community. Like,
exactly.
And our coaches foster that sort of like loving competitive environment, which I love, and that's why I came to Subu. That was the best decision I could have made for my CrossFit career.
They made it extra competitive this year by putting us on teams.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
But,
shout out Sid, because I know that shit was probably her idea.
Dude, Sid's been killing it lately.
I love Sid.
Yeah, the social media, the events. I feel like we've had more events than we've ever had.
Yeah. At
the gym, and I've been there a little over 3 years now. It's like almost 3.5 years.
Yeah, and they're fun events.
Yeah, they're a lot of fun.
I love it. I love Subu.
Yeah. But for the actual workout, this is probably the third hardest open workout I've done.
Yeah, how many?
Second or third.
Is this your third?
This is my fourth year.
Me too.
Yeah. So I don't know if you can remember.
Oh.
The ones.
I remember I don't remember my first Open too much. I think I remember having burpee box jumps.
Yeah, that was 22.1.
Yeah.
Where it was snatches. Wait.
That was
that burpee?
That was my first Open.
That was your first?
Was that my first? No, I started during COVID. That was my second Open.
That was your second, yeah.
And then there was like a wall walk Open workout 2 years ago.
So the one in 21.1, I redid it with Aaron.
Maybe that's what I'm thinking
And
of.
it was wall walks and dubs. That's all it was.
Yeah.
And it was increase. Like.
The one I remember most vividly is the burpee over barbell and deadlift workout. I loved that workout.
You loved that?
I loved it.
That was the worst one in my opinion.
Deadlifts are probably my favorite movement.
They are mine too, actually.
Next to like box jumps.
Yeah, they are mine too.
Give me a leg workout in there all day. But the burpee over bar, anything burpee over barbell, burpee over dumbbell, that's the worst. I'll take a thruster over that.
Yeah.
Any day.
Actually, I like thrusters too.
People hate them, but
that one had such a tight time cap. It was 10 minutes.
And you had to climb the ladder and go down.
And climb down.
Yeah. It was fun.
Destroyed my back, man. And so did this one. This one destroyed. My back is stiff.
I think everybody is hurting today.
And no one finished that workout without just, like,
I think everybody is hurting today. 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 I think everybody is hurting today.
dead on the floor for at least 5 minutes.
It was fun. This morning I went to go cheer on some people. And again, just like the spirit, even people just showing up on Saturday morning, they're not even working out. They're just there to support. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah. I would have done that. But I had to set up for this, which is great.
Yeah.
This is my favorite.
I'm excited.
Yeah. So we also wanted to talk about dating. I did send you some questions.
Yeah.
We don't have to
I tried not to filter. I tried not to go through them too deeply because I wanted to give a candid response.
Yeah. And that's what this is. This is more just about your experience, because I've been talking about this with a couple people on the podcast, and it's not just in our issue, right? This is globally, everyone's kind of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And I find it interesting that we've never been more so connected, but yet it seems so much harder. Or at least it seems that way compared to the past, right?
For sure.
Why do you think that is? Why is dating now harder, and marriage is on the decline? And
because I think people are realizing that they'd rather be alone than settle for something that may not be for them. Mm-hmm. When I look at my parents' generation, these 20-year-long marriages, 40-year-long marriages, I feel like in the past it was so socially normal to get married and have kids and, buy a house and live your life with that person for the rest of your life. Whereas now it's we're talking more about, if it's not for you, that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's becoming more socially normal to back out of something that doesn't feel right. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's a great thing, because I don't want to live a life of contentment. I joke around with people all the time, when they say well, I just want to be content. That word is it's the grossest word to me, because contentment just sounds like you're not reaching for the best.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
So I think now, and being so connected and having the world at our fingertips, it also makes things so oversaturated. I know you've talked about this in your previous podcasts, the dating apps. Everybody's on the dating apps. Or if they're not, it's how are you meeting people if you're not on the dating apps, right?
Exactly.
It's hard.
It's hard, but we still do a lot of things. We have a lot of friends. We go out. I don't want to say we meet new people, but friends of friends can bring other people in, and you can meet them that way. And yet it still seems
there's a disconnect.
It still seems a little bit hard. And I think it also has to do with the apps, because apps and social media. Because before these things, your expectation of, how do I say this? Not greatness, but success. Your expectation of success was a little bit lower. Mm-hmm. It was more just get a good job, make decent money. That was good enough. Now it's, you got to have some kind of clout. You have to have some kind of number of followers. You got to have some kind of influence on people. We're exposed to so much of that now that we expect people to have a certain amount of that. Maybe.
For sure. No, I agree with that. And comparison, it's very easy to see something and be well, I want that.
And then compare yourself to it.
Right, because you're getting a highlight reel.
Beauty is another one too. Seeing so many beautiful people.
The beauty standard in the world is totally, well, I think we've gotten better at establishing this is a highlight reel. You're seeing the best of my best.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel a lot more social media influencers are sharing the real side of their lives and not so much the carefully curated versions of their lives.
Really?
Yeah, I do think so. I think I've gone through my fair share of, removing content that doesn't feel inspiring in an authentic way. I think that's when you start to get enwrapped in what these idealized relationships that people share online. It's okay, well, we're only seeing a photo. How are you guys interacting behind the photo, right? Are you posting this just for followers? Or are you posting this because you love this person and are really excited to share this person? I think we see that on a standard human level, not even just influencer level. Everything's for social media.
Yeah, and I've seen these things before. I don't follow them, but I've been shown with my female friends of like families. Mm-hmm. It's just, a wife showing off her family, her kids, her husband, how beautiful life is. And I see that and I'm just like, I think it's cool, but it's like it's showing off this ideal family structure.
Right, and if you have it
in a modern way that people want to strive for. So, is that the kind of stuff you're talking about? Like,
yeah, I think
those kind of
people curate what they're sharing. I think more so than not, and I think it's important to just make sure, like, when you're to be a knowledgeable consumer.
Yeah. And kind of know what they're doing.
And like, be aware going into it, like, okay, this is definitely curated to seem, or not, maybe not seem, like, maybe they are living a beautiful, amazing life that is, it looks like it's curated, but it's not.
Yeah. So they're obviously showing the best parts, but I also think it's, I think they're pretty happy because if the husband's in it, yeah. I mean, you can kind of tell. So do you remember that show, John and Kate +8? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch it, but I remember when it was on TV. Yeah.
Okay, so you can tell even through all of the reality TV editing and this and that those two were on the brink of destroying each other.
Yeah.
Disaster.
Yeah.
Now, I know now on social media you can, you don't have to put the bad stuff out there, but I feel like it's more fun, like they're having fun as a family doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I don't know. Social media can be a dangerous place, but I think it also can be a really beautiful place to share the best parts of your life. Like for me, I feel like I used it as an outlet to share the most joyful parts of my life. And I think that's cool when other people do that, because that's when I go to social media, that's what I want to receive. I don't want, like, I deal with my own demons and, things in my day-to-day that when I go on social media, I don't necessarily want to see the sad,
other people,
like, bad stuff. So,
but it's also good to, find people that you can relate to.
For sure.
So more people putting their thoughts, feelings, emotions out there and how they deal with it, I think that could be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Can relate to that person. I mean, especially, in a forum like this too, I was listening to, do you know Justin Baldoni?
I don't think so.
If you don't, you should listen to his podcast. And I think every man in the world should listen to his podcast. It's called the Man Enough podcast. They talk a lot about, like, societal norms of being a man and how to be vulnerable, like things. He dives a little bit deeper into those elements of relationships, and I think it's so cool. But him sharing that on a social media platform, that's powerful. That's amazing.
Is this the former football player guy?
No, he's an actor. He was in Jane the Virgin with Gina Rodriguez.
I actually want to look this guy up right now. What's his name?
Justin Baldoni.
Justin.
He has a book, too, called Man Enough.
Oh, okay. I'll give it a shot.
I've never read the book, but his social media, I follow his social media, and sometimes I listen to his podcast. Yeah, he's great.
Okay.
10 out of 10. Yeah, that's sort of like totally off the path of what we were talking about.
No, but this is good because podcasts have actually helped me in my own life when I was feeling a little bit. So when I was feeling like a little bit lost, like, what am I doing wrong? Why isn't my life on the track that I wanted it to be? I was like, what am I doing that's not sufficient enough? And then I found a podcast. The one that really got me was Modern Wisdom. His name is Chris Williamson. He's like a big time podcaster now. But when I started listening to him 2.5 years ago, he was very small time still, but he's blown up. He was on Joe Rogan recently. He's having podcasts with like much bigger guests. Cool. He's been on Piers Morgan too. So like he's starting to get well known. But when I first met him, he would talk a lot about evolutionary psychology, dating, happiness, all this kind of stuff, because he was same thing, going through things himself, you know. And his outlet, his way to try to figure things out was to have, at the time, his guests have kind of changed now, but at the time, have experts on in those fields to help him better understand, you know, to help him better understand his own life and life in general.
Yeah.
So the curious part of him was being, you know,
I mean, I think you're doing that
through that
in a way.
That's kind of what,
not
experts
that's kind of necessarily, but
not necessarily experts, but I mean, still having good conversations.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and that's good enough, because you have information that you've learned through your own, you know, research and things you listen to in podcasts that you can share, you know, on here and share with me, like this guy, Justin Baldoni. Yeah, so like I'm gonna check him out, and now that's, you know, useful information for me, and that can help me
for sure. I think he has a lot to share about how we've been conditioned, or how men have been conditioned to think and view their roles in relationships and how they show up in the world. And I think, I mean, that's probably a lot of the questions that you sent to me before this and that we're going to talk about have to do with vulnerability and being able to show up in a relationship, being ready for what comes in a relationship. And I think what I've found in my experience in my situationships and relationships, there's a common theme, which we can dive into. I'm not going to like give away too much right now.
No, let's dive into it. What is this common theme?
I think one of the first things you asked me was like, what are the most important qualities I look for in my future partner? And I know Jess is going to laugh at me because I just said partner. My future boyfriend, husband. Yeah. For me, hetero, cis relationships is what I'm going to talk about. But I look for somebody who has a level of self-awareness and emotional intelligence. And I don't know if women are just more attuned to it or more open to talking about their emotions. I definitely think women are more open to talking about their emotions and diving deep into them and unpacking, you know, why is this triggering something in me, and exploring that. And I think what I want in my future partner is for them to have that level of self-awareness, mostly so that they can be held themselves accountable. Because that's been sort of the pitfall of my past situationships and relationships, is not having enough accountability in the relationship.
So you think they're not contributing enough, or there are certain things that are wrong in the relationship that they're just acknowledging?
I think, you know, when you have a growth-oriented mindset and you want to move together towards, you know, having a family, or, you know, if you want to have kids someday, you have to be able to tackle challenges together. And I think if you don't have accountability for yourself in your young adult life, when you're not even in a relationship, it can lead to a lot more conflict and not being able to, not having conflict resolution skills, things like that. So that's where...
So Jessica, on the podcast we did with Catherine recently, said men in therapy is a good thing. And I was like, I know where she's coming from, but it depends what this guy is in therapy for, right? Like, I think what she means is she wants a man who can go to therapy, who could learn how to be more open and communicate better in a relationship. So maybe the therapist can help them with those skills in order to do that, right? Yeah,
I mean, this is any relationship in general. Like, I mean, I think about my relationship with my parents, right? Like, I don't think therapy is, you don't need to have anything wrong with you. I also agree, like, therapy might not be for everybody, and that's fine. But it's like, what are you doing to better your mind, to better your relationship with yourself, with other people, to hold yourself accountable, to regulate your emotions? Like, what are you doing to dive deeper and understand yourself better so that you can show up in relationships better? And I think that's why I'm not going to talk for Jess and like her preferences for men and like therapy in general, but I think that is what's important is, are you working on yourself and are you trying to become a better version of yourself so that you can meet somebody and, you know, help them when they're down, so that if I'm at 20%, you can show up and be 80%. Or if we're both 20% that day, that we talk about that, and that's a conversation you're able to have. Yeah. And understand, okay, if you're not able to show up and give that 80% and I'm not either, that's okay. We're going to move through it together. And I truly don't think that men can show up in a relationship unless they, like, in a healthy way, unless they do the work inside themselves first. At least not the men that I'm interested in being with.
Gotcha.
At this point.
Yeah.
This has taken a lot of, like, self-evaluation. Just knowing that, you know, I'm doing the work on myself and I know how hard it is. And I mean, it gets ugly and you see versions of yourself. I mean, I go to therapy. Not because I think I have anything wrong with me, just because I have normal anxieties, because young adult life is hard. Life is hard, especially in the world that we live in. And finding out those things about myself and knowing that I'm going to be able to show up for somebody someday in a way that is healthy and supportive, and I expect somebody to meet me at the same level. Yeah. Which scares me because I feel like what I've been exposed to is not so much that, but I do have a lot of hope. I do.
I do too. Yeah. I have a huge amount of hope and what's the word? Optimism for the future, you know. And though, let's see, I don't know if this is going to take things off topic a little bit, but the way I see it is I look at things through an evolutionary lens, and we can talk about how that, you know, comes up against, because you're very faith-based, right? So we're definitely going to get into that. But I look at things through an evolutionary lens, and I feel like our environment has started changing way faster than our biology can keep up with.
What do you mean?
So we used to live in small tribes, right? And we needed each other. So we needed that social aspect that now that the things we needed each other for, we no longer need people for. So safety, we have police and laws. We don't need someone close to us to help keep us safe.
You don't think so?
Not really. I mean, you live on your own, right? I live on my own. I don't need a tribe next to me because there's some tiger or someone else from another tribe coming in to harm me.
Okay. So from like a necessity standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay.
From a necessity. Technically, we have police that you can call, you know, if you need assistance or something like that. In reality, I know as a woman, there's the fear or the probability of getting attacked or anything like that at any moment, right? But technically, we have a police force, you know, to help with that, technically. So we don't need it for safety anymore. You don't need it for food anymore. You know what I mean? Like our food, we have Publix. You don't need a tribe to someone go get the food while, you know, you stay and take care of the village or whatever. So all of that, that's what we evolved in.
Yeah.
Yet we're in such a drastically different environment now that our biology isn't there. So I think we're a lot of anxiety and maybe depression, but just that social angst that people have is because, you know, even though we're so connected, we still feel so, you know, apart and alone.
You think because we don't rely on each other as much for necessities.
Yeah, we don't have to rely on each other for anything. Everything's about independence nowadays, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying possibly the reason for this anxiety is because we're so independent of things anymore. We don't, like, our biology still craves that social environment. And what I mean by social is very social. You know, having someone right there next to you that you can talk to, speak to every night. You know, we used to camp around the fire and talk to each other, you know,
Right.
every single night before bed.
Right.
You know, and now what do? We're alone on our phone.
Yeah.
Just scrolling, looking.
Seeking connection elsewhere.
Yeah, seeking connection.
That's interesting. I do agree as far as like we don't need to rely on each other as much for basic necessities. But I think that's a really powerful thing that we don't have to, because now we get to decide that we want to connect with people. Like, we are not doing it because we have to anymore. Yeah. We're doing it because we want to, which I think is a really interesting shift. But in what you're saying, our biology is not caught up with us. That's an interesting...
Yeah. So, but this is where it comes back to putting in the work. Now we have to, you know, since we don't have to rely on anybody, we have to put in the work to try and obtain those, you know, social connections that we want when it comes to relationships, when it comes to friends, you know.
I think as humans, we're just diving deeper and deeper. I think that's why we're willing to have more conversations about those things. Versus 50 years ago, the man played the man's role and the woman played the woman's role, and that was that. And which I think is still relevant, or it can be relevant, because some relationships are like that, and that's fine. But I think now that we're having more conversations about, you know, I don't need you, I want you. So let's figure out how to do this song and dance.
Yeah, and it's gonna take some work, you know, on all our parts. But I think inevitably it should lead to better relationships if you get into a relationship, first of all, that you're not forced into, that you want to be in.
Yeah.
And second of all, like you said, if you've done enough work ahead of time to know that once you're in the relationship, because relationships are going to be hard, you have tools in order to, you know, help keep that relationship going.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and as far as men doing the work, I mean, I think they should, but something needs to happen in their life in order to get them to that point, you know?
I don't think that's necessary. I just think that's what's happening, right? Sometimes. I don't even think all the time. I know plenty of men who things have happened to them and they cope in other ways, which sort of saddens me, because I realize the impact and the help that I've gotten and how positively it's impacted my life. And knowing, like, isn't that heavy to carry that around? Like, you don't need to, I guess, is the point. Or you can learn skills that will help you deal with it in ways that aren't detrimental to your body or your health or your sleep or your connections with other people.
Yeah, so I will say men and women are different. And I think that they need to learn things in a different way. So where, you know, most women and some men, I'm not trying to make a huge generality here, but most women are open to just finding the help they need if they're in an uncomfortable situation. Men, I think it's slightly natural in them to just ball it up and try to not talk about it, because that's what men do.
Why do you think that is?
I think it's a little bit is culturally, even though the culture is changing on that. But also, I think a man feels best when they are strong, or at least when they feel strong. So if you ever, for most men, I'm not going to say all men, but for most masculine men, make them feel like you needed them for something, even though you didn't.
Right.
But if you make them feel like you needed them for something, like, oh, the light went out, you know.
They want to feel useful.
They want to feel useful. They want to feel like you need them, even though you don't. They want to feel that way. So even something as simple as the light bulb went out, can you help me? Even though you can easily just grab a freaking stepping stool and do it yourself. Just the fact that, you know, this is just one example. You know, you needed them for something, that's going to make them feel good.
So we're talking about a lot about like how men feel masculine, right? And I think it's different for every man.
It is.
That's just like one example. Masculinity is being useful to a woman. Oh, my brain started to do this. Like I started to go down a road, and let me see if I can find it now. So that's one man wanting a woman to be dependent on them. So keep that in your back. Keep that in your back pocket. There are other men that want women to show up at, like, they love a woman who's independent and confident and strong and can do it themselves. I think where women have a hard time, I think I'm a very independent, confident woman. Mm-hmm. I want a man who will show up and fill that masculine, useful, role that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. In order for me to not want to step into that role for them, I want them to show up in a way that is also emotional and masculine so that I can step into my feminine role. Okay. If I feel like you can't step into that, I'm never going to be able to let that down, right? Yeah. Because I know that I can fulfill those needs by myself. And I think that's where this disconnect between male and female relationships is that women are showing up so much so that men feel emasculated by it. Mm-hmm. Emasculated? That's the right word. Emasculated by it. And then they feel like, okay, well, if you can do everything, then what's my purpose in this? Mm-hmm. Whereas maybe we don't need to rely. We're talking about needs and, relying on each other for basic necessities. Mm-hmm. Maybe instead of that being where the connect is, I fill my needs, you fill your needs, we come together and connect emotionally, spiritually, sexually, all of these other things. That can be where the connection is, right? And I think a lot of it is societal pressure and societal norms of like filling these roles and being these things for each other. Whereas nowadays, I think people need to fill the roles for themselves and meet somebody else that matches them where they're at. And I think that's where the disconnect between men and women are at right now in this age of dating. It's like, and I know you've talked about this in the previous podcast before too. All the women I know don't really need a man, right? Do you need a woman in your life?
No.
Right?
No.
Like you're filling your basic needs. So I think it's allowing each other to step into those roles, but realizing you need to show up in all ways to be able to fill that role in my life or a woman in your life, Do you get?
Yeah. So
maybe that was a little too vague.
No. I see where you're getting at. So when two people, I would say of any kind of sexuality, when two people want to be together, right? You were independent before. Now you got to learn how to depend on each other, right?
I don't know if it's... I have a hard time with the word depend.
But it could be for anything. It could be for emotional needs. It could be, like...
Yeah,
when you have a partner, the whole point of having a partner is to live a life together, but also to have someone there, hopefully forever, but someone that you can depend on,
For sure.
I think it's okay to depend on people,
Yeah.
And I think part of a relationship, two independent people knowing they don't need each other, but coming together saying, hey,
I choose you.
I choose you.
I want to be with you.
I want to be with you. And in order to be with each other, I need to depend on you for either emotional support or when I have a thing at my gym to come support me. And when you have a thing for work, I can come support you.
Yeah.
Like
everybody's looking for that. Our basic default is connection.
Yeah, exactly. So, whether it's traditional male-female roles or whether it's just literally being there for each other when you need the person. That's something you need to come into the relationship ready to do, is to be open to being dependent on that person.
Yeah. I agree with that. That thread of thought. Yeah, so, for sure.
Yeah. And that can come in all sorts of ways. And I think that's across all different kinds of relationships, right? Whether it's gay relationships, you want to depend on each other, or to be there for you.
For sure.
And to live a life together.
Yeah.
So,
connection.
It's understandable to be guarded, right? At first, because you don't want to put your emotions out there and just get hurt again. But this is where, like you said, working on yourself and finding tools that you can use to apply in a relationship. And for men are, it's going to be a little bit harder for men to break out of that.
And I think Kat made a really good point. Men are like just now starting to learn this. Like they're a little behind but I think being open to it, and I think even bringing up that podcast, the Man Enough podcast.
Yeah.
I think men need to start holding each other accountable for being more emotional, being vulnerable, stepping into those non-traditional masculine, quote-unquote masculine roles, because I think that's where the breakthrough will happen. Mm-hmm. Right? A woman can sit here and tell you all day, like, well, this is what I'm looking for. But because society has put this label on men being like strong and provider and, caregiver, I feel like at this rate, men are really going to listen to each other.
Yeah.
Because that's the default of this country, baby. Men listening to each other.
And now I know how hard it would be for women now, because just imagining me trying to tell some of my friends.
Right.
They're going to be like, the fuck are you talking about?
Right. 100%.
Yeah. And this is where I said, like, for most men, they kind of have to somehow come to it themselves, because you can't force anyone. I mean, if a male friend ever came to me and wanted to talk about something, they know that they can talk to me. I actually have some friends that do. Some friends in Miami that for my whole life I thought they were okay and they were fine. And now they're in their 30s, and now I'm starting to realize, nope, they have insecurities. They have anxiety now.
Everybody does.
When before that wasn't even a thing we talked about when we were younger, because I guess we didn't have it. No one felt like it. But now that we're in adult life,
I think everybody has it. I just think now it's becoming more normalized to talk about and have conversations surrounding it.
Yeah, and he's, in drunken states, he has expressed this to me, and I'm like, dude, and mostly it's about he's married, but for him mostly it's about probably like his own expectations about his career and what he's doing in life.
Yeah.
I think he compares himself to his dad a lot and all this thing. But the point is, like,
does he go to therapy?
I think he has, actually. A
Really?
couple times, yeah.
Okay.
He says he's gone to therapy a couple times.
Because I think, so in my personal experience, not to like cut you off, everything that triggers you or like these expectations that you have for yourself are rooted in some element of your past.
Yep. Okay.
Whether it's like your a lot of it is your relationship with your parents. And I'm noticing this in my young adult life, and unpacking those previous, and I don't like to call them like traumas. I guess it is trauma though. Yeah. Anything that shapes your lens that triggers you, I guess is a way of saying it. Having somebody be able to like share that and be able to help you break down why is your level of expectation so high? What is your definition of success? Why is that your definition of success? Who instilled that in you? And I think once we start to have those conversations and break that down and really start to understand those pieces of ourselves, we can better show up for other people. Because I could share anything with you and it could be not rooted in, validity.
I mean, I think I had this discussion with Jess on our first podcast about when you were younger, the relationships with your parents and how that affected you as you got older. And
big time.
Yeah, and I try to tell this to even my own parents, mostly my mom, because she had it rough coming up, you know, and I try to tell her, like, she doesn't think she needs therapy at all.
That
Yeah,
generation, it's really hard to break through.
It's not, because they have that, you know, that mindset that you only go to therapy if there's something wrong with you, you know, but something seriously wrong, like a mental problem. And I'm like, no, not necessarily so. So I've tried to get her to go. She won't go. So she's stubborn. She is what it is. But I know from the way she was raised, and then the way she raised me, I know how that has affected me, and actually has made me an introvert. I think that's why I'm an introvert. I think I'm probably naturally an introvert, but things growing up with her, especially as an only child, like, it's just like, oh,
for sure,
it all makes sense. So, you know, I don't know if you've gotten that out of therapy, you know, the way you were raised, if that has affected you as an adult now.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh man, I grew up in a split household, pretty much. My parents got divorced when I was like 5 years old, and then they remained friends after it. Both got remarried, both had 2 kids. I'm the oldest of 5 kids, technically. Like, not together, but I have 4 half siblings.
4 halves? Okay.
But they're my siblings.
Yeah.
Shout out them. Love them so much. And throughout my, like, middle school and high school, all of my parents were friends. Like, we would do trips together. My dad and my stepdad would buy Phillies season tickets together. Like, kind of weird explaining this to people how that worked, but that was amazing for me to see them get along and be able to have a healthy relationship like that. In college, you know, things became a little bit more complicated as I started to grow up, and there were other elements that my parents didn't necessarily see eye to eye on. But in my youth, there was definitely, I mean, I grew up, my dad is a very Italian Catholic man. There are a lot of stereotypes there. And
The Sopranos.
What's that?
The Sopranos.
Yeah, not so much that stereotype, but definitely there was like this level of expectation to be self-sufficient and not depend on anybody, not have to depend on anybody. So I think how that's impacted my life is, you know, being a high performer, which with that comes a lot of anxiety and expectation and pressure. And I think that's for sure carried through my young adult life, which is why I started. That's not the only reason why I started going, but I wanted to unpack that and understand myself better, because I don't want to raise my kids in the same way. And I mean, our parents are doing the best that they can with the information that they have. And I try to remind myself that a lot. And giving them grace as they're learning how to parent for the first time. And I'm learning how to live my life. We're all learning together. So I think it's important to give them grace in that factor. But it's definitely hard as you get older to see those darker parts of your parents. You almost don't want to, because you love them and you want, like, you want them to be the best versions of themselves. And I think that's what therapy is showing me now, is like you said, my parents aren't going to go to therapy. I just got to meet them where they're at, which is challenging, but that's where boundaries come in. And that's where, like, okay, well, if you don't want to help yourself, it's not up to me to help you help yourself. Right? That's a whole other bag of worms that I could talk for hours about. But yeah, I agree. It's growing up and how it affects you into your, you know, adulthood is, let me see, what am I trying to say with this? It affects you quite a bit. Would you say it also affects your relationships as well? Yeah, 100%.
Okay. So, like,
what you see growing up, I think it greatly influences the person you choose to be with. right? It either negatively impacts that or positively impacts that if you're willing to work on the parts of yourself and unpack the parts of yourself that are triggered by certain parts of a relationship, right? Mm-hmm. So like for a long time, I think we seek what our parents give us or what our parents maybe didn't give us in childhood in our partners.
Got it.
So if we can learn to figure out how we can give ourselves those things, mm-hmm. we can start picking better people for us and not necessarily people that we think are the best for us, right? Mm-hmm. In my past, I think I would pick really, and I don't think these things have changed as far as like what the values I want in my partner too much. Like I still think these things are true, but I think that we definitely gravitate towards the negative pieces of our parents because it's familiar and it's comfortable and it's what we know. And we start to ask ourselves like, why do I keep going back to this style of relationship? Or mm-hmm. why do I keep going back to this thing that I think I need when it's not actually that? It's just comfort mm-hmm. and it's familiarity. And so we seek that. Whereas if you do the work and you break that down, you realize you don't actually like want that in somebody else. You want to find it within yourself instead of finding it in somebody else.
Exactly. Okay, so you find it in yourself, so you don't need it from someone else.
Yeah, and then you can pick somebody who's maybe like better mm-hmm. suited for you. It's sort of like in their independence too.
Got it. So how does faith play a role in your life mm-hmm. and who you choose as a partner?
So my faith journey has been really interesting over the past few years. I was raised in a Catholic household. I went to Catholic school. And then when I got to college, I sort of became like a creaster, like Christmas, mm-hmm. Easter was when I was going to church, Ash Wednesday, to get like the black cross on my forehead to prove that I was being a good Catholic. And then I was in a long distance relationship when I moved to Orlando in 2020. And I was dealing with it was a huge transitional phase of my life. I was starting my career. I just graduated amidst COVID. I was in a relationship with somebody who lived in Pennsylvania. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of things that I was working through during that time, and I needed to find connection. I was doing CrossFit. I was at work, but I was having a really hard time with processing the changes that were happening in my life. And I've always been faith-filled, but I think I really sought God that year when I moved here. So my friend asked me to go church hopping, and I found a church here, and ever since that day I've not left. I've been every Sunday since. I'm involved on the worship team. Like I'm very involved.
That's awesome.
And wanting to get more involved because I just have seen the positive impact it's had on my life and how I look at relationships and how I show up for other people. Because mm-hmm. it's really important to me to have the qualities of Jesus and show other people that and like mm-hmm. show up in that way in the world, I guess. So it really impacts my life and my relationships, how I pick a partner. I mean, one of my non-negotiables that I have found is like I need to be with somebody who believes in God and like mm-hmm. has that relationship too.
So that's what I was just about to ask you.
Yeah.
Is it a requirement that someone be in the church?
Yeah, at this point in my life, yeah.
Better men come out of the church?
I don't want to say better men, and I try to be careful when talking about this topic because I know like church hurt is very real, and people have gone through. Like, I'm not denying that. There are very evil people in this world who use religion to infiltrate and make up their own rules about how they treat other people. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really wrong. And when I look at Christianity and the church that I go to, we talk a lot about church hurt. And
what's it called? Church
hurt. So, like, people being hurt by the church.
Got it.
Being oppressed, being, slaughtered, like really very horrible things that are very real and very prevalent still in this world. And so it really is important for me to be with somebody who acknowledges that, you know, Jesus is their Lord and Savior. It's like, it's even still uncomfortable for me to talk about a little bit, and I'm still learning how to talk about it really candidly with people, because I think I fear like offending somebody by talking about it, but it is my reality and it's my truth, and I want to share the love of God with other people, and I want a partner that also wants that. So that's sort of the long-winded answer to that.
So does this mean that maybe you should be focusing on meeting people, men specifically, in the church or at other churches, you know?
I do think that is a great place to find my future person. I don't think it's the only place that I could find them, but I definitely think knowing that that's what I want for myself, I've had a lot of thought about this and becoming more involved in the young adult community in my church. But I do think I can find it in other places.
I would say, and you know, some of my own research on relationships, I think this has come up, like, it doesn't have to be, if you guys are respectful of each other's, you know, viewpoints and or values, but definitely, and my dad has a saying about this, people who have the same values are always going to have the better chance of a better relationship. And what my dad's saying is, like, you know, if you agree on the big rocks, everything is going to be fine. He says the medium and the small rocks you don't have to agree on, that's fine. Those are trivial things. But the big ones, the ones that are super important for
your values.
You know, whether it be religion or believing in Jesus, whether it be, you know, I don't know why this should be a thing, but whether it be like, you know, Democrat or Republican, or your viewpoints on politics, you know, things like religion, politics, you know, those are.
They say like religion, politics, money.
Exactly. Okay, so and money's another one.
Yeah.
Like your viewpoint on, you know, money, saving, investing. I mean, if someone's gambling all the time, you know, that's probably not a very good thing for, you know, if you don't want someone doing that. That's something you need to probably consider when picking someone. So those three, what they call it, non-dinner conversations. Things you don't bring up at, you know, the dinner table. If you can agree on those things, then kids is another one, wanting to have kids.
But I think, so in speaking about like non-negotiables, I think that your non-negotiables can change throughout your life.
They can.
Like there are plenty of people I know who wanted kids and then they met their partner and they love their partner so much and their partner doesn't want kids. And they're like, you know what?
Maybe I don't.
Yeah, or the opposite happens, right? Like I've met somebody who I love so much that I will have kids for them because I love them so much. So I think kids is a weird one because I think that can change. I don't know that your perspective on like fundamental things like religion, politics, and money change too much throughout. I mean, maybe they do.
I'm a big believer that you can change someone's opinion on money.
Yes,
that's actually
definitely
something that I haven't done too many podcasts on yet, but I do plan on getting more into investing and
cool,
you know, all that kind of stuff. But either way, it's understandable. Like if you meet someone, like I said, who's a gambler, who's terrible with money,
and you want somebody, right?
Yeah,
if that's your value.
Yeah, you're gonna.
I think what's more difficult too in this day and age is like, for me personally, what I've been navigating recently is like finding a balance between, like in my mind, I call them the trifecta, like mind, spirit, and body. And it's really important for me to find somebody who really invests in those three places in their lives. Like when I think about those three for myself, mind, I go to therapy. I journal. I really work on figuring out the darkest parts of me and making them better and being able to show up in all relationships in my life in a positive way or be able to break down, you know, why I feel the way I do about things. Body, you know, your fitness. What are you sleeping enough? are you being active? What kind of lifestyle do you live? And then spirit. So like, how are you investing in your spirit? How are you investing in your spirituality? For me, it's God and church and being involved in that community. So it's different for everybody. I know church is a hard topic for people to talk about, but
I mean, it's not a hard topic. It's just, you know, there's a lot more secular people in the world now, and I'm one of them. I'm not a religious person. However, I do feel like I am a spiritual person.
For sure.
And I try to work on that myself, you know. And the way I've been doing it is through meditation, ways I connect with people, trying not to be judgmental of things. And I do got to work on that, you know. So I do believe spirituality, whether you get it from religion or from some other way of thinking,
like
and
mindfulness.
practices that you do, I think that's very important, you know. Like yoga, they're all about spirituality.
And I feel like more and more, I mean, we're talking about this in our church community too, because our pastors are actually going to school right now for mental health counseling.
Really?
Yes, which I think is just so amazing in bridging that gap.
This seems like a very like modern.
It is.
Style
I mean,
of
it's
church.
a non-denominational Christian church, so it's pretty modern, very diverse community.
What's the name of it?
Celebration.
Celebration. Where's it at?
It's in Orlando. It's at the Museum of Art.
Museum of Art. Okay.
Yeah, it is. Like the first day I went there, I remember leaving feeling so inspired and empowered, and like just like the biggest weight lifted off of my shoulders when I left. And I never looked back. I was like, I don't even need to try anywhere else because I love this place so much and what they stand on. And I can't foresee a future. Like I want to bring my partner with me to church, and I want them to like I sing at church, and that for me is so powerful to like have that outlet in my life that if you don't have that, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, where are you
getting
placing your time and your, like, where are you coping, I guess.
Yeah.
So
do you feel like the church and your relationship with God, do you feel like it helps give you a sense of like hope, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I will say this, I'm not religious, but I was raised my whole life in church. And sometimes at my most desperate of moments, I'll say a prayer. Even though I'm kind of like, I don't really believe in church, but if, you know, I don't believe in religion, but if there's a God, if there's, and then you kind of like reach out to this, you know, higher being, you know, with your, you know, in your moments of like most desperation. And you always feel like a sense of hope, right? You always feel like a sense of like, you just spoke to someone, they listened, and they got your back.
Yeah.
You know? So
I do. I feel it every single day. And sometimes it's really hard to lean into that and to know that. But I think if you're actually rooted in faith and you believe in your heart that exists for you, it's much easier to tackle the hardest parts of your life because you know that you're on, like, I believe I'm on my path. My path is set for me. It's not like I make my decisions and ultimately they make me, but they're ordered. And that's something like I pray about a lot. Like I pray that God help me order my steps and like place me in situations that are conducive to me leading a life filled with joy and faith and helping others and generosity. Like that's another non-negotiable for myself is like I want to be with somebody who has a heart posture of generosity and somebody who is like willing to give themselves their time, their efforts, not necessarily money, but money is a part of it, tithing and like investing in things that are enriching to the soul and to the community. And so I definitely think it's helped me have hope. And I mean, as somebody I have anxiety so bad. And I've had periods of my life where I've been depressed, and, I have family members who deal with depression, and I think there's a balance there. Like, obviously I go to therapy and I go to church.
Yeah.
Like,
and
I think
both help. Yeah.
Like, I don't think it's all, if I pray and pray and pray and pray, it'll all go away someday. No, I think God gives you the opportunity to help yourself. And he presents, like, you kind of have to help yourself.
Yeah.
But I do think that if I didn't have faith, I would be very, very lost.
Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you have something like that.
Yeah.
That can help you.
And it's a fun community.
I was going to say, I've been to churches, too, that have great community. Like, the church community, for the most part, is a very welcoming, inviting, good energy place.
And, like, hearing other people's testimonials. Like, we have, there is this organization called Fresh Start, and they help men who suffer with addiction or depression or drug abuse. And each month they come to our 9 a.m. service, and it's so fun because they, like, fill the first 5 rows of the church pews. And, we've heard a lot of testimonials about when they graduate the program and they come back to the church, and you see them and you recognize their faces. It's just, I think it's a really cool thing. And I think it's a testament to the community that I'm in, and I wouldn't trade it. I don't know how people go throughout their lives without, like, therapy or faith, but, to each their own.
Yeah.
But I've seen, like, the works that it's done in my life and the people around me. And if anybody listening ever wants to come, you're welcome to join me. Celebration Church, Orlando Museum of Art, 9 a.m., 10:30 a.m. on Sundays.
9:30 a.m.
9 a.m., 10:30 a.m.
9 a.m., 10:30 a.m.
9 a.m., 10:30.
Yeah, to be up at 9 a.m. on a Sunday.
My worship. If I'm on worship team, I have to get there at 6:50, and I'm there till noon. But it's fun. I really like doing it. I really love it.
I've noticed that Nina is very into her faith right now.
Yeah.
She posts a lot.
I think she's always been. I think just when you're around a community of people that are like-minded, it helps you dive deeper. I think it's really great.
Athletes up there are very much into that. Because did you see what
Mayhem in general? I think is pretty spiritual.
Emma Carey? Mm-hmm. I think she just posted something about not doing the games for her faith or something like that.
Yeah.
So
and remembering your why.
Nina's buddy up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. But, yep. Okay. I think we're done. I appreciate you coming on.
Hard end.
We hit the hour perfectly.
Oh, really?
I've been trying to just, like, get things to an hour, but these conversations can last.
Yeah.
The one I did with Ryan was 2 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I'm going to filter that down.
I'm probably just going to put 2 hours out there.
Yeah.
And everyone will listen to the first 20 minutes.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, no problem.